It's not even a close competition.
In a world full of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, grading, selling, buying, one card game remains supreme. One man has the insights you need to know. Watch and subscribe now. YugiohTube.
What's up, YouTube? YugiohTube here, discussing two of the biggest names in cardboard and non-sport and gaming cardboard, that of the Charizard of Pokemon and the Blue Eyes White Dragon of Yu-Gi-Oh! Unfortunately, we are going to exclude Magic the Gathering and, of course, the Black Lotus card, only because we want to stick to Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Exclusively. My knowledge of Magic is not the greatest, but I do have a large interest and a large knowledge base between Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Those two are my fortes for sure. So we're just going to stick with the big guns. We're not going anything else. We're not talking about Dark Magicians, Dark Magician Girls, Blastoise, Venusaurs. We're simply going to the kings of the game, a.k.a. Charizard, Blue Eyes, and the best of the best. We're going first edition Charizard base, first edition LOB Blue Eyes. We are going to compare the two. We are going to talk about the differences. We're going to talk about the future projections of the two, the investment value of the two. What's the better buy? What's the riskier buy? Is the risk worth the return? We'll see. This video is going to discuss that, and let's get right into it. So, let's look at Blue Eyes White Dragon first. Okay, this is a card, two and a half years ago, first edition PSA 10, $800 to $1,000. Now, 2 years later, this same card, first edition PSA 10, $10,000 plus, depending on if you want wavy or glossy. Okay, so we're talking about a massive increase in price in the last 2 years. Charizard in the last few years, you know, at one point we were talking 20, 25, 30 grand. Now all of a sudden we're seeing about 35 to 45,000, perhaps even more for strong 10s of Charizards. So what we're saying is both cards have gone up. The steadier growth over the last 5-10 years, of course, has been the Charizard. The more mature growth, the more consistent incline. The exponential growth has been that of Blue Eyes White Dragon, LOB First Edition. I mean, this is a card that went from affordable to nearly unaffordable to a lot of people's pockets, right? And so what's the better buy? I see people saying, and this is a Yu-Gi-Oh channel, all right? So obviously you might say there's some Yu-Gi-Oh bias in this video. But what is the deal here with these two cards? Can Blue Eyes ever catch up to Charizard? Can Charizard simply outpace Blue Eyes? Will Blue Eyes take a dip? Will it be a fall from its exponential growth? Well, let's compare it, okay? For the Pop Report people, okay? Charizard's 120 10s out of almost 2.3 thousand graded. Charizard 293 graded, 79 10s. Okay, so what we're talking about here is about 1 in 3, about 30% of Blue Eyes get Gem Mint 10s. Okay. And about 5% or less of first edition Charizard sent to PSA get a Gem Mint 10. Big difference there, folks. Huge difference. Now, of course, the Yu-Gi-Oh people will say, well, Yu-Gi-Oh is just seeing its growth. Yu-Gi-Oh is just getting on the map, on the grid of things. And there's a lot of folks that at some point will just grade a Blue Eyes, whether it's a 10 or not. They'll grade it as a 6, 7, 8, 9 because they know they'll be able to get more for it that way rather than raw like a Charizard you see, right? Which makes a lot of sense, okay? You look at that and you say, well, I mean, everyone wanted the 10 originally. And I'm sure when people started grading Pokemon, the ratio of Charizard PSA 10 Gem Mints was much higher. The percentage was not 5%. It was probably much higher than that. And keep in mind here, folks, that some argue that PSA got stricter on Pokemon after Pokemon started to see massive increases in prices because they said, well, we got to keep those 10s high and rare and expensive because otherwise we will have people starting to lose interest in PSA. We want to keep PSA 10 prices high on the market and scarce and really drive those prices up to record-breaking prices so people keep submitting to us, right? That's a theory. There's no fact, this, that, whatever. All we know is that it's assumed, which I do believe is true, that people who submit with Blue Eyes going forward in the next 2-3 years, that 30% of Blue Eyes gem mints will drop. I do think that, okay? It might go to 25. It might go to 20. It might go below 20%, right? In terms of just plain ratios. Now, the problem here is, and this is the thing that I've been kind of trying to nail down. This is a Yu-Gi-Oh channel, and it's supposed to be pro-Yu-Gi-Oh, right? But I also like to keep it realistic. I don't like to fill people's minds with a bunch of baloney and say, well, Yu-Gi-Oh is the greatest game on earth. Let's be honest. Internationally, Yu-Gi-Oh does have a presence, especially in Asia and also in Europe. But as a brand internationally, Pokemon dominates the whole playing field. It's not even close, folks. And you look at the youth. The youth is all Pokemon. The youth is not Magic the Gathering. The youth is not Yu-Gi-Oh. But does that mean it's necessarily a bad thing? Okay, so now we go back to the other side of things. And a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players say, well, what does it matter? What does it matter what the youth are doing, right? Because Magic doesn't need youth to see high prices. You know, when you see a Black Lotus, when you see the Alpha and Beta and all that good stuff. So there is that counter argument too. So what we're doing here, folks, is we're trying to see the pros and cons, and there's so many of them. I mean, there's so many aspects and angles that people could take. But my personal opinion here is to not be comparing Blue Eyes White Dragon and Charizard. I think that's crazy to do. I think it's absolutely unbelievable to do such a thing. Okay? I think that's just not a smart thing because they're two different games. Yeah, they're important because they're in the same sector and they're in the same market. But let's also take this into effect. Blue Eyes White Dragon, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people can agree with this, and if you don't, well, you don't. Maybe it's because you have some biased interest. A Blue Eyes White Dragon, or even a Yu-Gi-Oh card in general, a much easier grade than a Pokemon card. I mean, and I could personally attest to this. This is someone that has high-end cards from both, from Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! A Yu-Gi-Oh card, in my experience, by far, not even close, is much, much easier to get a high grade than that of a Pokemon card, especially right out of a pack. You have a sealed box, you have a sealed pack of LOB, you have a good shot. It's at least a 9. Maybe even a favorable shot at a 10. In Pokemon, you have a sealed box, you have a sealed pack. You've got 5 to 10%, it will be a 10. You've got 40, 50%, maybe even a little higher than that, it'll be a 9. And there's also an outside shot that you're going to get an 8. I mean, because you got silvering issues. You've got white specks on the edges and corners right out of a pack. In Yu-Gi-Oh, it's very, very difficult to find whitening on any portion of a card, on the top edges, on the corners, right out of the pack. Usually out of the pack, the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh cards is that they don't grade well because they are not centered, or because they have some sort of surface defects or issues or waxing or dimples or whatever you want to call it. And even that, even if the waxing is very slight, PSA is pretty lenient with that in terms of the whitening on the borders, on those back borders and blue borders of the Pokemon cards. Very, very difficult. Extreme, not to mention the silvering issues. and the foiling issues. So as a whole, in my opinion, Pokemon cards in 10s, much, much more difficult to grade. And when you add in the fact that a box of first ed Pokemon base set is 80,000 compared to a 7 to 8,000 valuation for an LOB box, I mean, there's no competition here. This is not even close. You can look at the potential, okay? And you could say, well, I mean, Blue Eyes could reach Charizard. No, it won't, in my opinion. Not even close. And I don't have a first ed Charizard. And I have a first ed Blue Eyes, but I don't have a first ed Charizard Gem. But it's not even a close competition. You look at the Charizard, it is going to reach astronomical levels. You look at Blue Eyes, you say, well, it's going to be the trophy, right? Or one of them of Yu-Gi-Oh! But I don't see that really skyrocketing. Now, again, I am shocked by how much people pay for prize cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And especially in Asia. There's a lot of high-end Asian market buyers that are scooping these things up, that really are into it, right? So that's the one driving force for me of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the international, especially the Asian market, likes to buy these high-end collectibles, and they're not afraid to shell out the money for it. You see Japanese prize cards, 30, 40, 50,000, folks. So that's the one big thing that Pokemon doesn't have that Yu-Gi-Oh! Does. But to me, I see a much more safe, a much more stable investment in a Charizard PSA 10 than a Blue Eyes PSA 10. And again, this is coming from someone, myself, that has a Blue Eyes locked away, PSA 10 Gem Min, first ed, that does not have a first edition Charizard. I think the first edition Charizard's the much better option. Yeah, of course you're going to pay 3 times the amount. You can get 3 Blue Eyes for the one Charizard, right? But to compare the two and say, well, Blue Eyes could reach that, what Charizard? Blue Eyes can go head to head with Charizard. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy. And I've thought it's been crazy. I mean, and a lot of people say, well, look at it on the trend. I mean, it's been going up like crazy. I think at some point it's going to at least plateau for a little bit, similar to what you see with Charizard. At some point, it's the growth at some point has to go down, or at least plateau. It just has to. There's got to be a point. It can't continue on this exponential trend forever. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the supply out there, you're not going to see anybody with tons of Blue Eyes in first ed, right? But it just, I don't know. I don't see that wide demand. I mean, you look at people aged 30 to 40, they know what Charizard is. You ask people 10 to 15 years old, little kids, they know what Charizard is. Nobody knows what Blue Eyes White Dragon is age 5 to 15. Even 30 to 40, you're getting, so-so results. You're getting lukewarm. Because it just wasn't that big of a game compared to Pokemon. It didn't have that video game presence that Pokemon had. It didn't have the marketability that Pokemon had. It didn't have the long-term success that Pokemon had. Pokemon had elongated success. Yu-Gi-Oh! Had an absolute boom of her first few years. And then it just kind of fell off, folks. We don't talk about how much it really fell off when the GX era hit, and then especially the 5Ds on, especially into this era. It's a disaster. Okay, it's an absolute disaster in terms of comparatively to what it was, and compared to the long-term success that Pokemon was and still is today. They put out new games for Switch, and they're getting bought up like hotcakes. I mean, they could put out anything. It could be crap, but people are going to buy it, Pokemon. And that's the matter of the fact. I mean, you see it with the numbers. So if I'm investing in something and I'm saying, well, I'm going to compare this to this. And again, a counter-argument. Black Lotus, that's not a big thing. That's not a big monopoly like Pokemon. But I do think Magic the Gathering has their value derived because of a lot of different reasons. One of it was because the print run was, in my opinion, not even close to what the print run is for these two games, because it was a much older game, especially when it first came out with the alpha and beta sets. Secondly, there was no card sleeves. There was no card protectors for these Black Lotus cards. So those high-end cards, valid that they're that expensive, because back then, too, nobody stored those cards like they were, and it was the first card game. Nobody thought these things were going to be explosive like they are now. But again, we're going into Magic, and we try to stay off that topic. What do you think? Do you think that Blue Eyes White Dragon can rival Charizard? Do you think it can go toe-to-toe in terms of what the current value of it is now? They could match each other? Is that possible? Do you honestly think that that's possible? Let me know. Again, looking at the pop report for the pop people, 2.3 thousand Charizards graded, 120 10s, 283 Blue Eyes, much less. Much less. It's about, that's a lot less. 2,000 less cards graded with 79 10s, so almost 80 10s. Compared to the 120 Charizards with 2,000 more graded. So out of 2,000 more graded, there's only 40 more 10s Charizards. And again, I think PSA, if you believe that PSA will be stricter with Yu-Gi-Oh, which we've honestly have kind of seen lately, will be stricter with Blue Eyes, then yeah, that percentage and the fact of sheer supply dwindling, the percentage will go down, in my opinion. In terms of ratio of the number submitted to 10s, but I just don't see it. I mean, you open a pack, you got a good shot. Not a great shot, but you got a good shot of a 10 with Yu-Gi-Oh! You open a pack of Pokemon, you've got an outside shot, and here's the difference. A pack of Pokemon's 2 to 2,500, 3,000 even. A pack of Blue Eyes is 2 to 300. You know. And, who is going to open a $3,000 pack of Pokemon to pull a Charizard? Nobody. 300 for a Blue Eyes? Maybe. Maybe. Until next time, Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, hope you enjoyed. Comment down below if you like this video, if you like discussions. Please let me know. Give me a subscribe. What is it? The like button? Like button. Yeah. And the bell button, too. Until next time, Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, signing out.